Hello there, it's David Taylor and I'm back with another one of my video blogs. Sorry it's been a little while, been away on holiday and I've come back and completed all my sort of autumn cutback tasks and so now I'm finally able to bring you another video blog. We've got to a situation now where we're moving through into the middle part of October. The weather's cooled down considerably this week, so we're very much sort of looking to ensure that any plants that you may have had from the outside are now inside, because we're hovering, where we are in southwest Oxfordshire, we're hovering around about the sort of 4.5–5 degree mark at night time now. We're in a relatively rural area. And it really is chilling down now. We're just about not requiring to have the frost-free heater on yet, but we're not far off it. In fact, one night last week I did actually put it on because we did have a touch of frost. So we're not far off that time where we need to start thinking about making sure anything you want to retain and keep is put in a frost-free glass house. Now, there's not really a massive amount to talk about at this stage in the year. All of my plants now have been cut back, and I would recommend that if you've got any still to do, it's worth doing. What basically cutting back does is that it enables you to keep your plants relatively small, relatively tight. Here's an example of a plant that I really cut back hard. This is a bicolour leaf plant, and this has literally been stumped. And the thing is, with keeping a zonal pelargonium like this, cut down like this, is that it will need very, very little water through the winter. And then when we get to the early stages of next year, when we start getting a few breaks, I could dribble maybe a little bit on the top of the plant, and it will be ready to go. It'll just start getting going again. But keeping a plant like this through the winter is very easy. They don't need much water because it hasn't got any leaves to keep going, and it's very simple to keep a plant going through. Now, plants for show are very much at various stages. I try to cut them back quite hard. One of the problems that we get when we have a very sort of warmish September and sort of first week or two of October is that you do begin to get quite a bit of growth from the remaining leaves that you maybe didn't cut back. And you can continue to pick these off. I mean, this is a plant that I hope may make show next year, but I'm just continuing to take some of the larger leaves off. You can probably see on this one that we're beginning to get a nice lot of breaks all come through from where I've cut the plant back. It's still not too late to cut plants back. You can do it, but with the weather really starting to cool down now, I would probably really try and get that done within the next week or two at the absolute latest. Just so that your plants can heal up. We've still got relatively dry weather at the moment, and you can open your glass house during the day to heal those wounds really quickly. And then it's just a question of keeping the watering relatively low. Because the weather's been turned relatively cool, I'm actually keeping my plants, just giving them a little bit of dribble of water about a couple of times a week now. And that'll go down to probably once a week once we get towards the end of October and into November. Now, if you've got very small plants, these can continue to be potted on. I mean, if you've got cuttings, don't forget to pot them on. What I tend to do, if you're potting up cuttings now, is maybe put a little bit of extra drainage material in your mixture, just so that you don't sort of accidentally overwater them. Little plants like this that have been potted up into small pots are fine. That'll be fine to get through the winter. If it puts on a bit of growth during the winter time, I may pot it up. I mean, this is a plant called Point South. It is a basic zonal, but it's a young plant from a cutting taken back in late July. And this is grown on now, and I will keep that in there probably to about maybe late January, early February, and I may consider potting it up then. But that's probably going to be thought to be a plant considered for show in maybe a couple of years' time. But now angels, we can see this is a plant that I cut back really hard twice. I cut it back after the shows, and then I've cut it back again about a month ago. And you can perhaps begin to see that we're just beginning to get some nice growth on that plant now. That's just beginning to come back. The growth is really getting good on that now, just beginning to come through. Remains nice and tight and compact, and hopefully that'll make a good plant. Now, any larger plants that may have come through, here's an example of a large plant that I brought in from outdoors. It's a large basic zonal, and I've cut this back really, really hard. And that's going to come through hopefully and produce a pretty decent plant again next year. But I really do hack them down, and I can already see breaks beginning to break out all down through that stem, and that'll hopefully, you know, recover and make a really good plant again next year. Now, we often hear people talk about keeping plants outside during the winter and they get through the winter. It very much does depend on how the winter goes. We're hearing a few stories about the fact that there's been a powerful El Nino effect in the South Pacific in the last year, and that can sometimes mean that Northern Europe gets a cold winter. Well, it did happen a few years back. We had a string of cold winters when there was powerful El Nino in the South Pacific. So we never know what's going to happen. But if you get a lot of hard weather, sort of continuously for, you know, several days where the temperature stays below freezing at night, and even below freezing or not much above freezing during the day, Pelargoniums more often than not survive. If they're outside and we have a relatively mild winter, they more often than not do get through because they're relatively tough. So, you know, you pay your money and it takes your choice. If you've got facilities like a glass house that you just keep frost-free, that's all that Pelargoniums need to get through. Now, one thing that I haven't spoken a great deal about is my large Angel Eyes orange here. And this has put on a lot of growth during the autumn. And I'm pleased to see that I've now strung this up a bit more. It's had a lot of growth coming out from the side, which I've continually cut back. But it's put on a decent bit of growth. It flowered very heavily during the summer, which is what you would expect. But it's grown up and it's getting to the top of this trench now, and I'll hopefully be able to train it a bit more. One of the problems will be is that once it gets above this bubble wrap line, I do get frost on the inside of the windows. So, you know, it'll get complicated once it gets there because these stems will probably get caught with the frost. But that's the idea. I'll continue to train it up. But it's going more or less as much as I would have expected it to. Maybe I would have expected it to have grown a bit taller, to be quite honest, by this stage. But I'm not despondent. It's doing more or less how I want it to do. So, you know, that's doing very well. So that's my Angel Eyes orange. Okay, well, I'm not sure that I've got a great deal more to say at this stage. We're entering that time now where it's probably not really viable to take any more cuttings now unless you're prepared to use bottom heat. That's about the only thing that I would add. Any cuttings that I've taken have all been potted up now, and they're all growing away quite nicely. You usually find that your regals and angels grow very strongly during the winter because they prefer the colder conditions. So, you know, they'll do quite well. They don't mind it so much. Ideally, zonals could do with a little bit more warmth, but they will get through without any problems. So there we go. That's just about it for now. I'll hopefully be back next month just to give you a few final tips on how to get your plants through the winter. And we'll go on from there. So I'll see you again then.